What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Maria, and this is Mariacanized. Today we're going to be having a story time, so get your snacks, get your tea, and get comfy, because we're going to be talking about where I grew up. When I was reading Americanized, Sara told a story of how she grew up and the history of her birthplace. So I figured I could do something similar, except instead of telling the history, I could just tell my experience of when I lived in Guatemala. So let's get started. We begin in the year 2003. The day is January 13, and we're at Boca Raton Hospital. I am born. It was promptly 4 a.m., and because my parents were preoccupied with me coming out of the womb, my grandma bought my brother his first McDonald's meal. So I guess you could say it was a very eventful day. Anyways, I lived here in South Florida, and while my dad was at work and my brother at school, I stayed home with my mom who would take care of me. When I was about 2 years old, my parents decided to move to Guatemala, which, fun fact, is a real place and is located in Central America. We lived in a town called San Lucas, which is in the state of, stay with me, Zacatepeques. Big words, I know, and unfortunately I don't have a picture of my childhood home, but here's a map. From my time in Guatemala that I do remember, I will say this, it was absolutely phenomenal. If I had to divide the aspects of my life in Guatemala, it would be into these 5 categories: school, food, farm, festivities, and family. Let's start with my education. I used to go to a school called Intelego, which was actually right next to my house. Aw, so cute. I don't know what happened. Anyways, what I do remember from that school is that we actually did have elective classes like art and cooking, and those are the only 2 I remember because my brother took art and I took cooking. My brother learned how to sew, and I remember he made this little heart made with felt, which I thought was interesting. And then when I had my cooking classes, I learned how to use a knife and make like a 3-decker sandwich. I really wish we had those classes here, at least at a pretty young age, because I thought it was really important. Anyways, I really loved my cooking class. I thought it was a lot of fun, and we got to eat food. Also in Intelego, I remember we also would have a lot of plays. So one time I was part of this performance where we had to sing and dance, and when it was the day of the actual performance, I slipped because it was raining earlier. Alright, so next we have food. And even though I'm actually a very picky eater, which is unfortunate, I do remember some of my favorite foods back when I used to live there. In Guatemala, one of the famous foods we have is called chicharrón, which is basically just like pig fat. It's really good. I am most definitely a carnivore because of that. And my parents were also good cooks, so enjoy the following pictures of tostadas, tamales, tortillas, and frijoles, which are refried black beans. And as for dessert, you guys need to try some chiquis. You can really only get them in very niche Hispanic marketplaces or to a very obscure Walmart, which I found them once at. But they're really good. I love them. One of my favorite desserts that I also liked is called champurradas. I actually attempted to make them last month. Also, they're very rare to get, and they're only made in Guatemala. So if you ever do go, I recommend you get it. Normally you just, it's like a circle. It's supposed to be like a flat circle, and then you dip it in coffee. It's really good, so I suggest you try it. Alright, the next category we have is farm life. So actually, me and my brother would go to this farm called La Granja de San Pietro. And we just learned about animals, how to take care of them. We would do chores. I also learned how to ride a horse. It was really great. And my dad was actually the owner of a fish farm. So that was also pretty fun. I remember we would go and help him feed the fish once a month. And then basically he would just sell those fish to other farmers or to marketplaces, and then they would sell them. So that was a pretty interesting experience, because then once we came here, there wasn't farm life out and about. We would drive a few blocks, and then we had this farm, and then you keep driving, and then someone else had a farm. But anyways, now we're gonna talk about festivities. So the only 2 I really remember is my cousin's quinceañera and the processions. So I won't go too much into detail with quinceañeras. It's pretty basic. I just remember my cousins. It was pretty fun until halfway through the party I started crying because the music got too loud. But other than that, it's a really fun celebration. But my favorite was the processions. So processions are essentially traditional Catholic parades. that basically commemorates an important event or an important part of history that has to do with the Catholic Church. So it could be like a statue of like Jesus or the Virgin Mary or some saints, and then everyone's praying. They literally block out the streets, and then they'll have people carry them. I remember my dad and my aunt would carry some of the statues sometimes with just a group of people. They go down the streets and then they play these great processional hymns and songs, like with a marching band who's also following the parade floats. Well, they're not really parade floats, but here's a picture. If you ever do go to Guatemala, I would recommend going during Holy Week, because that's when they are the most elaborate, and it's just a really beautiful event to experience. Except if you do go to Guatemala, make sure to check the political state of it, because right now it's not doing great. You have your typical corruptive government, abuse of power, violation of human rights, all that fun stuff. Anyways, one of the other reasons we did move to Guatemala was because we had family there. My dad's family is actually from there. They were from a different city. It was called Antigua, which is a really famous city. That's where the cathedral is. But once I was 6 years old and we had already lived there for about 4 years, my dad got sick. So we decided to move back to the United States because that's where he would be provided with the best care. I just remember my mom asked me when my last day of school was, and then when I got home one day, there were a lot of strangers or people that we didn't know that were helping us move out, and I was very confused. We ended up staying with our grandma for a while, and then we came here to the States. And I remember thinking that we'd go back at some point, but we never did, obviously, because I'm here in the year 2023, and we left Guatemala in 2009. So once we moved here, I ended up starting the first grade. And then by the time I got to second grade, I already had learned English, because when I came in, I only spoke Spanish. And even though I did live here from birth till 2 years old, because I was at home with my mom, who, fun fact, only speaks Spanish, I didn't know English. And then moving to Guatemala, I had no reason, except I do remember we had an English class that I did not pay attention to. But once we had moved here, there wasn't much of a culture shock except the language itself and the circumstances by which we moved here. So because my dad was sick and he had to go to like a hospital for his special care, we didn't see him around like at all. We went from living in this really nice house to my brother, mom, and I sharing a single room where my aunt lived here in Florida, which is where we were staying at. And we stayed there for about 3 years until my dad finally did come back, and then we had our own apartment. And I also didn't have as many friends. I still think about what my life would have been like if I had stayed in Guatemala. But I guess that's a video for another day. So as you can see, there's a lot to unpack here. Though me and Sara had quite different experiences and reasons for moving to the States, with my case being moving back to the States, I thought it'd be nice to share my story and talk about how things worked out for me. While Sara's family endured hardships, dangers, and risked their lives to come here for a better life, for my family it was more of a convenience, but that's okay because we all have a different story, and it's part of what helps create America's melting pot. So that's my story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So if you guys have any questions about Guatemala or want to know more, please comment down below any questions you may have, or if you have any recommendations for a new video. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe, and make sure to hit that notification bell if you want to get notifications every time I post a new video, which trust me, you will want to see. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!